That's testing.
Good morning, Rotarians and guests. Welcome to the Rotary Club of Hudson. I'm Ron Strobel, the Sergeant at Arms. Something a little unusual this morning, but we will have our president, Father Joe Boisel, give the invocation this morning.
Does anybody remember the movie The Jerk with Steve Martin? Yeah, where he walks up to the priest and he says, "Father, you look like a religious man." Yeah, that's sort of it, isn't it? Let's stand for the invocation, shall we? Almighty God, we thank you for bringing us safely to the beginning of this day. We pray that you would help us throughout it not to be overwhelmed by adversity, but in all things always to find you present and eager to do your will. Amen.
Thank you, Father Joe. And to lead us in the pledge and the four-way test, Keith Beers. All you people whose name starts with an A, get ready because we're getting to the end of the alphabet now.
Good morning. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And then the four-way test of the things we think, do, and say. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you, Keith. And to introduce our guests, Chris Barker. Next thing you know, we'll be singing again.
Good morning, Rotarians and guests. We have one guest with us today, and no, it's not Evan McCauley, but we see you. No. But if she could please stand, we have Mandy Conley. She is a guest of Evans, and she's an attorney in Hudson. So thank you for joining us, Mandy. We hope to see you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And now our president, Father Joe Boisel.
You'll remember me. I was the guy who was just up here praying a moment ago. Good morning, everyone. I have a million things going on today, and so just a few announcements we have. And the first is that there is a club board meeting immediately following today's meeting. So all board members, please stay for that. Any guests who want to, you're certainly welcome. The second thing is August 12th and 13th. This is only a month away. There's the Hudson Beer Garden, and we are doing hot dogs and brats for that. I'm not sure who started off in the organization of this process, but somehow it's to me now. And so what we need is for you to at least have those dates. It's a Friday evening and a Saturday. So if you could kind of plan a couple hours on one of those 2 days to come and help make dogs and brats and you know, hang out next to the beer tent, which is not a bad gig if you get it. So yeah, plan for that, August 12 and 13. I think that's, oh, there was something else. My mind has slipped. Maybe it'll come to me in a moment. Anything else anybody remembers I should be announcing? Yeah, James.
So tonight is the Guardians game for Rotary. So,
That's what yes.
and actually I'm going, so if anyone else is going, we could share a ride.
Right, and tickets just there at the door, or?
I think you had to order ahead of time, but maybe if you check out the email, there may be still a way to get tickets. I'm not sure.
Okay, but it is in Polio Now night tonight at Progressive Field for the Guardians. So if you're interested in going to that, yeah, check out the email. Certainly you can buy tickets there. I have been to a couple games this year and they're never sold out. So yeah, you're on good footing there.
And if you already have a ticket, see me, we'll Chair Wright.
Okay. And then last thing, I would point out that if you're interested in running the AV equipment during a meeting, maybe once a month or something like that, maybe more, will you see me today? And we could use somebody to come and help out there. James has done heavy lifting for a long time. Thomas is doing some work as well with that, but we could use more help. So if you're interested, see me today. With that, George Snyder's going to come and introduce our guest.
Thank you, Joe. And Joe didn't know this. I just found out a few minutes ago myself that Evan McCauley just passed a CFP, a Certified Financial Professional exam. So. So good morning, Rotarians. Good morning to our guests. Today we have the second of 3 programs this month on education. Last week we heard from Hudson Public Schools about how they spend our taxpayer dollars wisely. In 2 weeks from now, we will hear from Western Reserve Academy on how the pandemic has changed education. Today, guest speaker JANICE MATTEUCCI will talk about the exciting things going on at the Cuyahoga Valley Environmental Education Center. Located on Oak Hill Road, this 500-acre campus offers children and adults alike the opportunity to get up close and personal with nature. You may have attended one of their annual clam bakes that they hold each fall in support of the Conservancy for Cuyahoga Valley National Park. Janice is currently Vice President of Strategic Initiatives for the Conservancy and previously served as its Chief Operating Officer for 20 years. And she was tasked with building the organization's infrastructure and its business development opportunities. She came to the National Park in 1996 as Associate Director of the Environmental Ed Center, where she managed all aspects of day-to-day operations and helped develop its resident program curriculum. Her prior experience includes teaching at the Cleveland School of the Arts and at Shaker Heights High. Earlier, she served as Program Director for Young Audiences of Cleveland and as Technical Director for the Abrams Arts Center at the Henry Street Settlement in New York City. I have known Janice for roughly 15 years and have always respected her knowledge, her intellect, and her very calm demeanor. Please join me now, ladies and gentlemen, in giving a warm Rotary welcome to our guest speaker.
Are you okay if I stay here and wander down here a little bit? And I'll tell you why. Because we have a lot of PowerPoints organizationally. And I got caught in that PowerPoint maze. And so I decided to start taking pieces, parts of things and putting one together myself. So I need to look at it to know what I put together. And if I stay up there, I'm going to have pictures and photos coming up and think, now, why did I put that in there again? So if you don't mind, that's going to be me glancing at the screen. You know, often when you do these presentations, you have a laptop in front of you. So I don't have that. So I'm going to be upfront and honest. And thank you so much for having me today. George, I really appreciate that you have included me in this conversation about education and the importance of education. So I will back up a little bit so I can give you some context, and let's also make this a conversation. If you have a question, blurt it out, or we'll also have some time for questions at the end of it. So if you will, I don't know if James is still there. There we go. So welcome to Cuyahoga Valley National Park. I am going to hopefully see a show of hands of how many have visited Cuyahoga Valley National Park just down the road. Okay, good. That's a good thing, because you do know sometimes in presentations, there are many hands that don't go up. Believe it or not, we have 2.2 million visitors a year. It's the 7th most visited national park, yet many Northeast Ohioans don't even know we have a national park in our backyard. But often people put two and two together of like, oh yeah, I have been there. I just didn't realize it was a national park. Slide. Or advance it. I don't know what the word is. I can't really see that very well, but I wanted to put it in context of the park, the 33,000 acres of Cuyahoga Valley National Park in this topo map. The most important thing is note, of course, how the river, I think most of us know, the river starts in the north, heads south, goes back north again, 100 miles of Cuyahoga River. But to see on the red line how much of that has protected national park around Cuyahoga Valley or Cuyahoga River. Some of us are old enough to remember 1969, the infamous burning of Cuyahoga River. Most of you wouldn't remember that, but that was part of the catalyst of Cuyahoga Valley National Park coming into being to really protect the Cuyahoga River. Next slide, please. And so all the things that the river and the park protects around the river, in the park, you've experienced Brandywine Falls, you've walked on the towpath. The towpath in 1993, the first segment of it was the segment in the park itself. Now we know, most of us know that 100 miles of that towpath is connected from Cleveland to New Philadelphia. So Cuyahoga Valley National Park has a nice long history. Next slide, please. I wanted to put the park purpose up there just so everyone could see. This is in the foundation document, the why this park was created in 1974. Preserve and protect for public use and enjoyment, historic, scenic, natural and recreational values of the river and its valley. To maintain the open space and connection with the urban environment, really important. We are smack between Cleveland and Akron. It is the urban environment. It is the opportunity to have that solace and that respite and to get away from daily life. It was one of 3 parks in the 70s that were established that way. Cuyahoga Valley, Gateway in New York City, and then also Golden Gate National Park. Millions of people in urban areas to have an opportunity to go to a national park without just packing up the family and going to the Grand Canyon. Not everybody has that opportunity. So national park in your own backyard. But I wanted you to see, and it's to provide for recreation and educational needs of the visiting public. Not all national parks name education in their formation documents. Really important for this in terms of the context of me talking about the education center. Next slide, please. So it's the other thing important for me to kind of introduce who I am beyond what George did is that, this park is an example of partnerships. It's a partnership park. It's not just the federal agency runs the national park, people come to it, the feds do everything. Congressionally supported, that changes, the winds change as administrations change. So most national parks need partners to really get everything done. Most national parks, when you go to the store or you go stay in a hotel, somebody else is running that. The park's definitely not doing that. Cuyahoga Valley has been working very hard on these partnerships all these years. So 2 of the major partners in the park that you may know of, and you better if you know George, is Cuyahoga Valley Scenic Railroad. If you haven't been on that train, talk to that guy. And I think most of you know the Scenic Railroad does an amazing amount of visitation through the national park. For many people, their first visit, maybe they're just going through on the train and learning about a national park. And what formerly was called Polar Express, I know it has a new name. Thousands upon thousands upon thousands of families, children have been a part of that train excursion in the national park. And then Countryside Initiative is the initiative to bring farms and farmers back to the valley, which was an agricultural valley. They sponsor the farmers market every Saturday in the summer, and then at Old Trail School in the winter, and introduced farmers back into the valley back in the mid-90s. that are using organic practices. And some of those you may know about, the Trap Farm on 303, the Nietenbeck Farm. I think there are 10 at this point in time. So those are two of the primary partners. And then you can go to the next slide because I'll show you our logo, which we might change one of these days. So that's who I work for. I work for the Conservancy for Cuyahoga Valley National Park. We were just having a conversation about Conservancy as kind of a standard name. So sometimes you think the Land Conservancy or the Western Reserve Land Conservancy or the Nature Conservancy. We chose that name because it's active. It means being part of and, you know, that conservation of the park itself. So I work for the Conservancy. We are a 501c3 nonprofit agency that works side by side with Cuyahoga Valley National Park to enhance the visitor experience. That's kind of our broad mission, and to, you know, to foster awareness of the park and also to engage the community. Next slide, please. So I'm going to go through a couple of things we do before I talk education, because you're thinking, where's the education piece of this? But it needs context, right? Definitely. One of the main things we do is fundraising on behalf of the park and to help the park, also to help ourselves. You know, we have to stay intact. We have about 80 employees. The Park Service has roughly the same amount of full-time employees. So we have employees in different divisions. Fundraising is a big piece of work that we do. We have memberships and individual giving. Some of you in the room might be a membership of the member of the Conservancy. We also do fundraising of a sponsor an acre, which is kind of a little gift thing you can do. You sponsor an acre in the park for a year. You don't get to take that acre home with you, but you know, it's kind of like a PBS type of thing. We have a license plate, the Cuyahoga Valley license plate. You know, those are kind of smaller initiatives. We have a lot of corporate giving. We get corporations that support us. And then, of course, foundations, fundraising events. George mentioned the clam bake. We just had an event called Topography and Elevation this summer for trails. The fundraising money was specifically for trail related. And then we also have been working on federal and state grants. Some of you may have heard that we recently raised money to buy the old Brandywine golf course. So we're still in the process of that. The golf course, the Conservancy bought it. We raised the money, we bought it. We're going to donate it over to the park, to the national park, with the exception of the par 3 that's on the west side. We're keeping those 14 acres to activate it and make it more available to community. Don't ask me exactly what we're going to do with it yet. We're going through that planning process. We're not going to do a golf course. I know that's so funny. We did a big planning process with consultants, and I raised my hand. I said, why don't we do a golf course? But and if you've ever been on that property, it's a stunning riverfront property that you will see over the next couple of years activated and be a kind of another hub for the park itself. Next slide, please. So other things that we do, we have a program called Extraordinary Spaces. We have rental spaces in the park for weddings, retreats, meetings, corporate groups. We have a small space for 12, and we have the Happy Days Visitor Center for 200. That is part of the way we as a nonprofit organization generate revenue, because a lot of programs that we do demand funding, like our education program, but we also need to generate our own revenue. And so we do that through this rental space program. Next slide, please. We also have the Stanford House. Sorry, you can't see that. And that is on Stanford Road, right there in the kind of the heart of the park. And it's a historic farmhouse that we rent out to primarily groups, not individuals so much. It has 30 beds, group restrooms. It is, I just heard from staff, it was booked solid every day in the month of June. And it's we have a couple days open in July, if you're looking for space. But people just love it. It's one of the few places to stay in Cuyahoga Valley National Park. It's the Stanford House, and then privately owned in Brandywine Falls are really the only places you can stay in the park right now. Next slide, please. And then we also operate 3 retail stores, again, as a way for us to generate our own revenue. One is in the Boston Mill Visitor Center. It's a very small space. Hopefully you've been to that. That visitor center, that was another thing. The Conservancy raised the money for the visitor center, built it, and then gave it to the park so that we don't own it anymore. We also have a store in Peninsula, right behind the Winking Lizard, called Trail Mix Peninsula. For holiday shopping, great place to go. We have a lot of kind of park stuff, souvenirs, and some food, and most important thing, ice cream. And then Boston Store, which is right there next to the MD Garage. That's the other store we have. And next slide, please. We do concerts, we do adult programming. We just had a Rhythm on the River concert on Sunday in which 3,000 people attended. It was a new concert series intended to introduce a more diverse audience to the national park. And it was a jazz concert, and we had tons of people attend that concert. We have lectures. So we do a variety of public programming. The park does programming, and the Conservancy does programming. And the Scenic Railroad does programming, and Countryside does. So you can see how it's a very rich, it makes it a very rich experience for us in Northeast Ohio, that the national park is fully activated. And again, the park can't do it by themselves. Okay, next slide, please. And then we have volunteer opportunities. There's just a variety of opportunities. There are hundreds and hundreds of possibilities, from pulling invasive species to helping at the visitor center desk to doing some office work. We have over, I believe the last count was 4,000 volunteers in a year. So if you want to volunteer in a national park, or you know somebody that wants to, we've got the opportunity, believe me. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk a little bit then about the, I guess I did this wrong because the top is missing everything. I'm just going to talk about it's education in a national park. And why is education important in a national park? It is the greatest outdoor classroom, and the possibilities really are endless. And again, we have children in Cleveland, Akron, Hudson, Bainbridge, you know, the surrounding areas. And I think many of us know kids don't get out as much as they used to. So we really feel the value of education is critical and important. If you'll go to the next slide. So George mentioned a place, and it's a place called Cuyahoga Valley Environmental Education Center. And it is on a major road, off a major road, kind of tucked where most people don't know where it is. It's a 500-acre campus, basically, is how I like to refer to it. And it has ponds, forests, meadows. It is close to the general public, although it backs up to the Oak Hill trail use area. So, you know, general public will wander in on occasion, but it's closed for education groups, primarily. 2 campuses. I think I have a next slide. If you'll go to the next slide. This is where I get a little confused about what I put in. Oh yeah. So it's 2 campuses, and here's an image from what is still existing partially on one of the campuses from the 1800s. It was the Gilson family. And when you see the building, it says Gilson, I believe 1836, I think is the date on it. And as you know, it was a canal town, and the Gilsons owned a lot of property, and they were contiguous to their closest neighbor was Hale Farm, which was miles and miles away. So the Gilson property now looks like, next slide, please. Now looks like this. The one on the left, that brick part, is that building that you saw earlier. I loved, by the way, you probably didn't see it, but in the last slide, they had like names of people, and then it said Rover. So they had written the dog's name. So the Lipscomb campus has 64 beds. It's a dormitory type facility, a dining hall, a science lab, air conditioned. Think about that, going to camp. It's air conditioned. That never used to happen. Many of us have memories of camp that are still a little frightening. Yeah, we really decided when we built these facilities, kids were going to be coming from their schools. We wanted enough creature comforts to be able to explore the outdoors and to be able to be engaged and to take a shower, because we want the kids to take a shower. You know, we really wanted them to be able to get on with learning in a comfortable, fun way. So the campus, that campus and the other one were built in 1994, as George said, and our first group of kids came in spring. I'm sorry, it was built in the early 90s, came in spring of 1994. Next slide. The other campus is called the White Pines campus. Same thing, dormitory, dining hall, outbuilding, beautiful campfire circles that we have, trails, the 500 acres of trails. It's kind of up on the hill. So one of the trails are if you've ever done it, the steps that go down to the covered bridge. And if you go as a chaperone, the children will tell you exactly how many steps they are, because when they get to the top, they say, woohoo, you know, because they count them. And it's a pretty hefty hike, that's for sure. Next slide, please. Dormitories, bunk bed style. The kids really settle in for the period of time. Some stay 3 days, 2 nights. Some stay 2 days, 1 night. We used to have a four-day program, so it's just a variety depending on the school's needs. Next slide, please. And another important creature comfort, bathrooms, nice bathrooms, you know, privacy. Again, I think some of you might have some memories of camp that are just a little bit different. So it was really important to make sure these facilities are good, solid facilities. The Park Service owns and operates, and we do all the management and run the program. Next slide, please. There you go. The girls all settled in, enjoying themselves. And that's fine. And then we have another part of the campus that's a large building called the November Lodge. Next slide, with the legacy room, so that there's a big space where if we have 2 schools or we have a large group, or some are at the White Pines or in some are at Lipscomb, that's 128 kids. We needed a big space in which they could gather. And it's a beautiful space. Next slide. It has an art room. It has these lovely little spots that when it's raining, you can sit inside, or in the morning right before they start their program. You know, kids just really like to gather in small groups. We call those sun spots, actually, so that they can sit there. So that building is used quite a bit. That was added in 1999 as part of a fundraising campaign. And it was one of those great fundraising moments when we had somebody of wealth who was introduced to us by a teacher, and we were walking around the campus with him, and he said, you know what, I always wanted to build a building. And we said, you know what, we need a building. And so it was one of those brokered deals that just like landed in our laps. And, you know, now thousands of children have the opportunity to use that building. Next slide, please. I wanted to put this statistic up there because I think it's important. That's okay, you can stay there. It's 20% of kids, there you go. Our science scores increase by 27% when you're doing learning outdoors, when you're learning in, you know, having the hands-on experience. So, you know, I just showed you buildings, which are really important, but most of our spaces are outdoor classrooms. That's really the way we do it. 4 walls, no 4 walls and a roof. And that's super important. You can see kind of on the left, the campfire. A campfire and a night hike are just magical for students. And really, for many kids, it's a, you know, life-changing experience. Next slide, please. So I'll go through some of these. You know, in the spring, we're out. Go ahead, you can keep going. In the summer, we're out. In the fall, go ahead and keep doing it. We could be having a quiet moment by the Cuyahoga River, and we're out in the winter. This is a 4-season program. And the kids need to be prepared. We work with their teachers, we work with their schools. Many schools, the children don't have the family support to even be able to come with hats and coats, and we help provide that. We work with organizations to help us do that. We do fundraising on behalf of bringing children to the program. As you can imagine, the program costs costs quite a bit of money with staffing, with supplies, transportation. So we provide scholarships, we provide funding to schools that children are part of the free or reduced lunch program. When we first started this program, we had about 25 to 30% of the schools asking for assistance. Now we are well beyond 50%. So, and it's all schools. There is need. So we charge a per child fee, and then the school determines how they do that. But again, we have them out all the time, and we have to feed them. And so it's a big program. Next slide, please. The curriculum itself is critical. It's interdisciplinary. We connect to the national, international connections. We talk about the river. We talk about watersheds. We talk about each of us in a watershed and how important that is globally, connected to the world. We absolutely connect to the school curricula. We stay on top of testing and understanding what kinds of needs the kids have. We're discovery problem-based, and we focus on social and emotional learning. Next slide. So I'll just go through a couple so you can see the kids out there. Go ahead and just go through them. Winter again, right at the Cuyahoga River, doing water quality testing. This is an important slide because we also provide for just goofing around and playing and getting muddy, which is, these guys had a great time doing that. We have a couple of these, there's a new thing called Gaga pits. We have a couple of those, which is kind of like volleyball in a pit. I don't really quite know how it works, but the kids will look exhausted after being out hiking for 2 hours and talking to the ranger or the facilitator. And then you say, okay, recess, and boom, everybody jumps up and does this. So next slide, please. Just a little stat. Over the past 28 years, we've had 60,000 children from Ohio. We have 2,000 or 3,000 every year in our overnight program. Next slide, please. Then we also do day programs. So these are just one-off field trips. They come for an hour or 2 hours. Sometimes it's the little ones. We do K to 12. We just recently got a grant from Akron Public Schools to bring every second grader in Akron Public Schools through our program. You can go to the next slide. The greater park is the classroom for this, not just the Environmental Ed Center. We use the entire park. You can go ahead, next slide. And as you can see, so they can be over at the lock in Peninsula to learn about the locks and to learn about the mason's marks in the lock. They can be finding something kind of creepy and holding it up. And we do a lot with the river. Again, we do a lot with Cuyahoga River. Next slide, please. This one blew me away. 1,000 corporate logos. And, think about that. Kids can identify McDonald's, Nike, boom, 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 but they can't identify some plant or animal. So you can go through a few slides where we're doing that. We're helping them identify. They like to hold worms in their hands. They like to look at the little bugs. They like to see what's found in the pond. There's always a critter. And the moment there's a squeal of excitement often. And then indoor work too. You can go to the next slide now. I'll go quickly through this. So where we stand now with the Environmental Ed Center, you see that we do a lot of programming. We've been doing it for years. We also want to stay up on what's new, what's fresh, what's exciting. What we have found is that often the kids come to the program, they have an amazing experience, they write us letters, but then they go home and then what, right? And then what? How do you connect this to your community? How do you connect this to your life? How is it more than just a fun field trip experience and that was that? So we have a new initiative that we're working on very heavily in which we want to help kids understand it's their national park. Every child that comes through it belongs to all of us. It is not, oh, that's that place where I went to a field trip, but I can't come back with my family. I'm not comfortable. I don't know it. I don't know anything more than that place. We want to make sure that they deepen that relationship, that help those children learn and grow and enjoy intellectually, but also social emotionally, how does that connect to me? Each one of you has probably had one of those aha moments in a park or in a green space. We want that to happen with children. We want to also help children prepare to be environmental stewards. We know, we hear it, we know what's happening in the world, climate change, environmental justice. We really need to make sure that young stewards are created through exposure and through understanding and through knowledge. Not tell people what to do, show people what's out there. And we want to promote that lifelong environmental and civic engagement, much like you are all part of civic engagement and how critical and important that is. And then opportunities to explore careers, because often you can go to a national park and you see those cool rangers with that cool hat, but some kids don't connect with like, is that for me? If you're a person of color and you don't see you don't see any rangers that are persons of color, you just kind of dismiss, that's not a career for me. But it is a career, it's a career for everyone. So we're really trying with our new initiative to keep this in the background as we kind of move forward, and we're growing that program. And I think next slide, I think I'm pretty close to done. So yeah, get outside, even if it's snowing and even if it's raining. I hope seeing the children's faces is inspiring and just reminds us that the natural world in Cuyahoga Valley National Park belongs to everyone. So that's it for me in terms of kind of what we're doing, and I'm happy to entertain any questions. Am I doing okay with time? Okay, great. This is your thing. Okay. Uh-oh, this might be a hard question then.
Not just one.
This is one of your many
I
things.
think it's on. Is it on?
Yeah. I can.
I have a little history in the park.
Mhm.
I was part of the group that lobbied for a number of years
Oh.
to get the park.
Okay.
But I was also a member of the advisory board of what was then the Oak Hill Environmental Education Center,
Yes.
which was the first initiative with park, and I am blown away.
Oh, maybe so nice
You
to
guys
hear that.
have done an amazing job. And anything that we can do to get people from beyond the Summit Cuyahoga County to understand that relationship with life support systems that has nothing to do with corporate logos,
Yes.
except that people have to have jobs.
Right.
That's the other part of it. So, but I'm just really impressed with what you're doing.
Well, I think this is so important to hear that it was grassroots that established Cuyahoga Valley National Park. It was people like you that said, look at this wonderful tract of land that is soon going to be encroached upon, and lobbied really hard and worked very hard at that.
Yes.
President Ford signed it in 1974, December 28th, I believe.
Mhm.
So the park is coming on its 50th anniversary in the next 2 years, and so you'll see a lot of activity. But really, we tell that story all the time. The Conservancy is predated by the organizations that it eventually became the Cuyahoga Valley Association. What were you called at the time? Maybe it
Well,
was the
it was the
Peninsula.
Oak Hill Environmental
Right.
Education Center, but as the park grew, I knew that it was incorporated.
Right, right.
By that time, I had migrated out of the area for a number of years. I'm an environmental scientist, educator.
Wonderful.
And one of the questions that I had, given the way you describe the programs,
Mhm.
is have you ever hooked up with the Globe program?
Yes, yes, we have actually. I don't know where we stand now with working with Globe, but we have we have sent many of our educators, staff to Globe trainings. So you,
Well,
yes.
Okay, well, if you ever want to get the country coordinator for that,
Mhm.
I would be happy to help you do that. She was a grad student of mine a number of years ago.
Oh, I'd love that connection.
So Yeah, and we were doing all kinds of land use change over time.
Mhm.
But she's really interested in non-traditional ways to get people involved. So
I will get your information.
thank you.
So, yeah, go ahead. Mimi. Oh,
It
thank you.
was- I hate to bring up the name, but it was a creature of a former vice president named Al Gore. It's global learning and observations to benefit the environment, and it's a scientist, teacher, student partnership with 140 countries.
Yep.
And they all use the same protocols for taking the measurements related to specific issues. And there are two master computers. One's in Frankfurt, Germany, and one's in Boulder, well, yeah, in Boulder, Colorado at NOAA headquarters. And once the kids get the data, they report it
Right.
into those computers, and it's then public. The governments, as part of the protocol, have sworn not to tamper with it.
Right.
So it can't be politically manipulated.
Mhm.
And it's peer reviewed. The information, data that comes out of that is peer reviewed every other year. There's a global conference for the kids in some country or other. And they take their projects, they learn how to present. It's an incredible STEM.
Yep.
um,
No, it's
Stu-
kids,
K through
K-12.
12.
K-12.
K2, I'm sorry, yeah.
It's a
K-12.
model it's a wonderful model. We also do other kind of citizen science. There's a lot out there now where you as a citizen or as a kid can contribute scientific data that goes into a larger database. So you saw there the kids doing water quality testing on the Cuyahoga
Yeah.
River. We've been doing that for 20 some years, and we've got a huge body of data of, when it rains a lot, the treatment plant up the road pours more water into the Cuyahoga and then that
Polluted
day, the
water.
E. coli goes sky high. The kids are engaged in that kind of true scientific research
And
that has meaning.
Yes, and every single one of those investigations has connected with it a team of scientists and the educators that the kids are working with at whatever level they're working. And one year we took I did an assessment to find out the extent to which the data that was being collected was accurate
Mhm.
and therefore could be used for actually making decisions. It turns out that kids in grades 5 through 7 collect data that's more accurate than people like me because they follow those protocols. And then we realized when we were having them work in the forests that if the kid wasn't really attentive when entering the data into the computer, that they might say they had a tree that was 5 centimeters wide or 5 centimeters tall and 7 meters wide, and so we had to train the computers to throw that back at them so they would pay attention to the order in which they entered measurements for whatever they were doing. But it turns out that we have data on how these storms in the Sahara affect air quality and water along the East Coast. You can track the dust particles that came from the Sahara. So we know how a lot of those diseases and stuff travel. But it's been an amazing program, and it started in, I think the first measurements we have were from 1995 or 1996.
Well, and I'm so glad you're here because this is a testament to how we try to do real science and real data and really, have the kids have an authentic experience while having fun, while going out hiking. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Janice, I'm Phil Tobin. Thank you so
Hi, Phil.
much for
Nice to
coming
see you
today.
again.
Really exciting to have you here. I have a suggestion,
Sure.
that might potentially supercharge what you're doing. Go back to one of the slides where you have the children outdoor and you're teaching them in an outdoor environment. Can you go back to one of those slides? Just pick one.
I
Up.
think James left. Right.
Let's assume you have a slide up there that,
Oh, there you are.
hey, there's Dave.
Just go backwards. Okay. Well, we have that image in our minds. Everybody go back to
We
that
can
image.
imagine, just imagine you have a bunch of children up there that you
Mhm.
showed that are sitting around in the morning or the afternoon, and they're being taught the environment right by themselves outside.
Mhm.
Take those children out and replace them with grandparents.
Oh,
Now,
interesting.
here's something interesting.
Interesting.
I've been involved in philanthropy for a number of years, as my son Tom, and the stories of the activities of a grandparent and a grandchild would literally raise the hair on the back of your
Mhm.
neck.
Mhm.
It's just amazing. And if you take the grandparents and take an off time season, like perhaps maybe in the fall when the kids are in class, and create an environment where the grandparents are gathered around, just like those little kids are, you're going to create something magical.
Mhm.
Because for one thing, the grandparents have the time. They also have an amazing thing by being a grandparent, and I happen to be one of those. You have a special relationship between a grandparent and a child, and you're going to build that relationship from the top down.
Mhm.
The only thing you're not going to do is ask those grandparents to go up 100 steps.
Yeah.
That's just not going to happen. It's just not
Some
gonna
of them will.
But other than that, you have a great opportunity not only to help educate the grandchildren,
Yep.
but also to help provide funding for you because they have the time, they have the money, they have the
Mhm.
interest, and they have the passion of developing their children, their grandchildren. Just a cool thing.
Yeah, Phil, thank you. You know, we do intergenerational programs. We do adult programs. We have adults that have said to us when we have kids at summer camp, where's our camp? So you are absolutely right. You saw the bigger slice of the work we do with kids, but there is more, and there needs to be even more than that, especially if we're connecting with children who aren't normally coming out to this national park. We want to join their faith-based organizations. We want people to come through their churches, to come through their CDC, community development corporations, and grandparents. You're absolutely right. That is a key. So I appreciate that comment.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming. We really appreciate it. I was thinking about the way any private, public kind of, especially tourist driven. We have the ski resorts,
Right.
And as you said, there's the Stanford House. So there's like precious few places for lodging outside of the park. I mean, inside the park. You can go outside the park, obviously, to hotels and the like. And things like I don't know, canoes on the river, of that sort of thing. There seems to not be a whole lot, this from my vantage point. Is there more coming, or is that intentional that there's not that
Yeah,
much?
no, you're absolutely right. The regional and national and international visitation has risen considerably over the years. And you're right. There's not as much recreational activity kind of organized. That property on the west side that the Conservancy is keeping, we are in a planning process to activate it, including river access, possibly a river center type approach in which when you come to the park, you have a place to go there. You can stay a couple of hours and then branch out and do your hikes or go to Brandywine Falls. So you're right on target. It is a little bit of a like, hey, we have this great park, but what do you do there? And we have to remember, not all of us hike or bike. You do that, but what else do I do there? So there's been a connecting. Now you have river access in the metro parks just upstream. There's a new campground on Akron Peninsula Road that's privately owned, which is they have cabins, tent camping, primitive camping. And then we're looking at more lodging through the Conservancy. So you're right. Sometimes you arrive and you're like, national park, what do I do? Which was why we raise money for that visitor center too. That's always a great starting point. Yep, but it does need to be activated. Any other questions? I think I've probably gone over my time. Oh, here he comes. Thank you for your help, by the way.
First of all, sorry that the slides would move. I don't have a fast trigger finger.
Doesn't matter.
No, you had an automatic transition on there.
Oh, I did. Okay, see? It's 'cause I
But,
was,
anyway, so wonderful presentation, really great. One thing I picked up on, maybe because I'm associated with the schools, is you talked about the social emotional learning for the
mhm.
kids. So, and I think it's great. It's not just a matter of imparting a lot of information about the park, but really stimulating the joy of learning and being with the others and being out there. And so you may have touched on this, but so do you have programs that bring kids, let's say from Cleveland and Akron, who do not get a chance to be out in the parks as
Yep.
much?
yeah, that was that kind of scholarship money
Oh,
I
okay,
talked
yeah.
about. 50% of our students come from either Cleveland or Akron,
Mhm.
and then all the surrounding suburbs. We even have a school coming from Columbus now, but absolutely. And we have many kids that, you know, sometimes I'll be over at the center and I'll see kids see a deer and go crazy. And I think, oh, geez, another deer. But then I forget, you know, it's just, you don't see that in your own home community.
Because I know in our district, we're trying to do more work with Akron Public Schools.
Yep.
Be more involved with them. So that's fantastic. Again, thank you very much.
Oh, yeah. And I do know, I don't think Hudson schools come to the Environmental Education Center anymore, but they used to come for the overnight program. Yeah, I don't know if you remember that. But I think we do day programs and things.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I need the Rotabuck. Is it around here somewhere? We're going to employ you in a little bit of work here if we can. Where's the basket? Basket up there? Is it in the podium? Yes. Oh, this is helpful. Okay. So the yeah, you get to pick. It's today's payout is $15. Whoa. That's a take your priest to lunch day, I think. And the jackpot, $546. All right. So should I tell you what my number is before you draw it? Okay. $546. And the number is 599341. 599341. All right. There are only 7 marbles left in here. One of them is black, as you can see. See that there is a black marble. You know, I'm pretty squirrely though. I mean, so, all right. So here you go. Oh my word! Winner, winner, chicken dinner. Here's your money, first of all. Take that. What's it? All right. There it is. You remember who helped you pick it? You know, just keep that in mind. All right, 5'46". I don't remember the last one was, but that's great. Well, I thought I'd close today with a little story. You know, Irish people, we have stories about everything. Some of them are true. This one happens to be, and it's a story about a man. His name was John Dolan, and he was a homeless man, lived in the streets of London, and his life was a wreck. I mean, it was everything that you could imagine. He had addiction issues. He was in and out of prison something like 12 times. His life was just, you know, totally disconnected from family and friends. It was in very bad shape. And one day he meets another homeless guy who has something that he wants. It's a pit bull terrier named George. And so he starts negotiating with this other fellow, you know, can I buy George from you? The guy wasn't really attached to the dog. And so he said, what do you got of value? George had 1 can of warm beer. And he said, I'll trade you this can of beer for that dog. And after a bit of haggling back and forth, the trade was made. John got George, the other fellow got the can of beer, off they went. And George and John became quite a pair. And And the dog seemed to bring more than just companionship to this man. He started bringing like a sense of meaning. And John always had this sort of impulse for art. And next thing you know, though he had done nothing with it all his life, he starts drawing sketches of his dog George all over London. Big Ben, Piccadilly Circus, St. Paul's Cathedral, all over the place. And he's drawing these sketches, and being homeless and poor, someone happened along one day and said, wow, that's an amazing sketch. Can I buy that from you? And he sold it to him. And pretty soon it became pretty famous around the neighborhood. Hey, there's this homeless guy, John, has make these great sketches of his dog in front of all these things. And so people started buying them. And then one day, this fellow whose name was Richard Howard Griffin, who owned an art studio in London, a very renowned one, happened along, and he sees John sketching, and he's amazed. He said, that's fantastic. Where did you go to school? Never been to school. How do you do that? And he's watching him do it. And he says to John, he says, how would you like to have an exhibit at my gallery? And John said, well, whatever that means, yes, I'm in. And he has an exhibit, and all of his sketches sold for $5,000 a piece and up. He became an overnight success in the art world. I mean, you could Google this fellow. He's all over it. He's like amazing. His whole life changed because someone saw this talent in him, a talent that came because he bought a dog that came to life. It was there all along. Now, I happen to be a person of faith, and so I happen to think that God sent a DOG to change his life. You can think whatever you want to think. But John becomes an overnight success in the art world. Before that, though, he knew his life was a wreck. And no one needed to tell him. Eating out of a garbage can would tell you all you need to know about yourself. So he knew that. And he felt like he was worth less, right? But someone saw a talent in him, changed his life. And I thought about, when I read that story and heard about that, how it would be so great if everyone who needed that had someone who saw in them something worthwhile, and it would change their life in the same way. So you all go have a great day, be a Rotarian, make a difference in the world, all right?